The pivotal fifth game on tap for Saturday. Welcome to NHL Wraparound Stanley Cupdate for Saturday, June 14th, 2025. Vic and Neil with you on this Saturday. Anything going on in your world?
No, just a beautiful day and nice to be Saturday, waiting for 8 p.m. Eastern.
Well, we will get to that game in a second, as we will some other things that perhaps may have been somewhat important on June 14th as we go later on in this show. Game 5 taking place between the Oilers and the Panthers at 8 o'clock Eastern on TNT. And a few notes to go over here, Neil, with both teams making the long trek back to Edmonton, only one day off. So the turnaround will take place later on Saturday evening. But I think the first question that is out there is who will be the Edmonton goaltender, given that Calvin Pickard came in, stopped 22 of 23 shots after the Oilers fell behind 3-0 in the first period. Where do you see this one headed?
I can't see them going back to Skinner. And I called it right in Game 4 when I said that they would go back to Skinner in that game. I just thought that's what the coaches would do. And I just feel in this game, they can't not give the net now to Pickard the way they did in the LA series. And then he went 6 straight from there. So let's see if I'm right or wrong. Am I telepathic or not?
Well, we don't know, because on Friday's show, I had suggested the possibility that the Oilers do go back to Skinner, knowing that Pickard is a perfect backup in this situation. And also, if the Oilers should fall behind and they make that switch again, they now know that they can come back against the Panthers.
They do, but if I'm the coach, I'm going to put the goalie in that I think is in the head of the Panthers, and that's Pickard. They see Skinner go back in, they're mentally going to say, okay, well, we can beat this guy. They see Pickard go back in, and your head goes to, last time they put him in, they beat us. And that's all subconscious. It's not conscious thoughts where they go, oh, we'll never win now. I think there's a subconscious edge to both teams.
Is there anything to the point, and this had been brought up in several places, that perhaps the Oilers protect Pickard a bit better than they do Skinner? And again, maybe it's a mental thing, maybe it's a physical thing, who knows? But is there a sense that for whatever reason, and you've seen this enough with goalie tandems throughout the league for years now, decades, in fact, that it just appears that certain clubs play better in front of one goaltender than the other?
Yeah, and to be honest, usually it's a starter, right? Because they feel more confident in playing in front of the starter than they do the backup. But I've seen cases where the backup is such a popular guy on the team that they don't want to let him down. And that could be the case here with Calvin.
We will certainly update that on a recap tomorrow. Another point I want to make about this game is that Troy Stecher came back in the lineup for John Klingberg for Game 4 and had only one shift early in the second period and did not play for the rest of the game, which was about 50 minutes or so of actual playing time if you count the overtime. I had believed that he may have been hurt when Carter Verhaeghe's stick came up, which led to the third Panther goal. You didn't think he was injured. And head coach Chris Knobloch has said, no, he just benched him. But it feels a little bit peculiar to me to consciously go with 5 defensemen for that long a period against a team as heavy as the Panthers. What's your thoughts?
I agree with you totally. It was just a little bump on the head from what I saw.
Does it make sense that he would have been benched for that turnover and then play a shift and then not play after that if he was injured? And we're not questioning Chris Knobloch's integrity here or anything like that, and very often you're trying to cover up injuries. But to say that he was benched just came off a little bit odd to me.
I find it odd myself, and I'm confused on that, on the Stecher issue, and we'll see. Again, just like with Pickard, will he be in the lineup tonight?
Let's shift over to the power plays now, because both teams have scored power play goals in all 4 of the games thus far. The Oilers are 4 for 20, and the Panthers are 7 for 21, converting on 1 out of every 3 attempts. And interestingly enough, the Oilers' penalty killing entering the finals was 66%. So they were giving up a goal on 1 every 3 power play opportunities against them. So everything is certainly holding course here. And if you're the Oilers, how are you making adjustments against this power play of the Florida Panthers? Because I think that we have seen Florida has had more success against the Oilers' power play when they've played a bit more passive. What do you think the Oilers have to do to combat a power play that's hitting on a third of their attempts thus far?
I just think be more aggressive, keep forcing them. But again, you know how much video they'll watch, right? They'll watch video of their power play and go over it and over it and over it. But both teams have some awesome guys out there on the power play, and Florida and Edmonton. I mean, what can you say? Wouldn't you love to have either one of their power plays? And I get it. Edmonton's only scoring on 1 out of every 5, whereas Florida's getting 1 out of every 3. We'll see if that holds true again tonight.
But what you're suggesting is the opposite of where Florida has had success, being a little bit more passive and not trying to force McDavid or Draisaitl.
Right.
Your suggestion is the opposite, that Edmonton needs to be more aggressive against the Florida power play.
Right, exactly. I mean, you don't want to be too aggressive against McDavid because he'll undress you, right? I mean, he can do things that other players can't do. And Draisaitl is incredible for those sharp angle goals from the opposite side where he goes down on one knee basically and puts it in. But I think that Edmonton needs to force him a little bit harder.
Where do you see both teams needing to succeed to get the upper leg in this series and bring themselves to within a game in the Stanley Cup? Let's start with the Florida Panthers.
You know, this is going to be easy to say, and that is that what's been their downfall has been not being able to hold a lead.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think they've still got to go out, play the way they were playing in the first period last game if they can in Edmonton. But then think a lot and talk a lot about how the game changes for them once they get the lead. They got to make sure that they hold that lead, and they haven't been doing that. No penalties. Don't give them the chance to even things up.
And we have said, you know, just in 3 out of the 4 games that the turn between the first and the second periods, in terms of dominance, it's one team then the other, has been very surprising, because you would think that once teams get to the final, that they would be able to lock down a lot better than they have.
Yeah, you would think so. And Edmonton, during the regular season, they ended third in their division. They were not a team that just romp through the league.
Right. No, it was a fight all season for them.
Yeah. I mean, they're doing better, obviously, in the playoffs than they ever did during the regular season. And by the way, can I mention one other thing that has nothing to do with the playoffs, but has to do with the Oilers?
Yeah.
I understand why this happened. I totally understand it. But can you believe that Connor McDavid is not on the first or second All-Star team for this season?
Surprising. Yes, of course.
But understandable, because the first center was a guy who was up for the MVP of the league, Nate McKinnon.
Yep.
And the second team All-Star was McDavid's teammate, Leon Draisaitl, who led the league in goal scoring. You just feel like McDavid should have been the left winger, right winger, defenseman, something. You know, he's that good.
But when you look at the players that did get this honor, a lot of great players in this league.
Oh, there is.
And McKinnon and Draisaitl are 2 of the others most dynamic players in the NHL, along with Connor McDavid. So
you're right.
Can we go back to the series before we
move on? Before we start talking about all-star teams?
No, we're not talking about all-star teams. We're talking about other stuff.
Okay.
So I think for the Oilers, something that we have seen is they were able to succeed, really starting in the second period. I mean, we've seen it at other points during the series, but you saw it during the second period of Game 4, that they were able to succeed in the dirty areas of the ice, winning 50-50s, winning along the wall, getting position out in front, things that are very typical to the Florida Panthers game. And with the Oilers' knowledge that not only can they play this way, they can succeed that way, and they can come back that way against a team like Florida, who specializes in this type of play. Biggest thing for them is, can they do it again? And is it going to be sustainable for a full 60 minutes, not only Saturday, but potentially in Game 6 or 7?
I just said that the Panthers had to learn how to, or had to figure out how to hold a lead against the Oilers. The Oilers are going to have to figure out how not to have to come from behind and secure the lead in the game. And so that they don't have to do what they've done miraculously, which is, I hate to use the pun, but claw their way back in on the Panthers.
But the pushback from Florida is Paul Maurice is showing tape. Just show the first period, because Edmonton had no room through center ice. They couldn't win a board battle. They couldn't get the puck in deep and retain. And the Panthers' forecheck was terrific. I mean, it was just the way that they would have wanted it. And the objective for them certainly is going to be able to do that again and then maintain it for the full 60 minutes. I mean, This is clearly the immovable object against the irresistible force. But both teams are showing signs of both of those characteristics.
Yes, they are. And it is one headline I read this morning. It's an awesome final, but a very strange final.
There's no question. And when you sit down and you watch tonight, anybody that really thinks that they know what is going to happen is lying.
They definitely are lying, and lying to themselves.
Absolutely. The storylines are terrific, and we'll see how this unfolds once again Saturday, 8 o'clock on TNT. Game 6 will be Tuesday down in Florida. And then if there is a 7th and final game for the second consecutive spring between these two clubs, it'll be back in Edmonton next Friday, June 20th.
Let me ask you a question, Vic. If you are Stan Bowman and Chris Knobloch, is it upsetting that your home game, Game 5, you get 24 hours rest? Florida's home game, Game 6, you get 48 hours rest. So what I'm saying here is the Florida team is more rested for their home ice advantage than Edmonton is for their home ice advantage.
I don't believe you even think about it at this point, because you know that you can win in their building, and it is what it is. They're not going to make any excuses for that. Let's put it that way.
Just one thing I thought of, though. It's a very awkward scheduling only 24 hours between a game in South Florida and in Edmonton, Alberta.
Right. And it's been atypical of what has happened over the last several seasons, where travel usually gets an extra day off, and certainly not the case here. But both teams are dealing with it, and so we'll see what happens. Let's go on to some news. It is official, according to several reports, that Mitch Marner is done as a member of the Toronto Maple Leafs, going to hit the open market on July 1st. So among the suitors looking to make big plays here that we are hearing, Carolina, that has almost $28.5 million in cap space as of this morning. Also, the LA Kings, with just under $22 million in cap space, and the Vegas Golden Knights, who have a little bit less than $10 million, but somehow they always find their way into the mix here.
They always do. I got to tell you, Mitch Marner is going to help any team he goes to. Okay, I want to say that first and foremost. But I don't know that that's a good fit for Carolina. Isn't that what they already have? Don't they already have a lot of Mitch Marners? Like, Isn't he Sebastian Aho? Isn't he Seth Jarvis? Isn't he these guys? And the news about him being officially done is about as new as saying that Elvis is officially dead. We've known this for quite a while, that he wasn't coming back. And anybody that denies that is lying.
Where have we heard this before on this show? Somebody else departing the Maple Leafs organization, and this will come at the end of the 2025-26 season. Longtime radio voice, Joe Bowen, who's worked over 3,800 games over the course of 4 decades. He'd been partnered over the years, first with Harry Neal and over the last almost 3 decades with Jim Ralph. And anybody that has heard Bowen's enthusiastic, bombastic calls over the years, he's become as much of a fixture on the radio waves up in Toronto as Foster Hewitt was in the earliest of years.
Holy Mackinac was one that you heard all the time from Joe Bowen. And he is very, very, very well known in Toronto as the voice of the Leafs. And he's so bombastic that if anybody that hasn't heard Joe Bowen but has heard our good friend Jack Michaels, Joe Bowen might make Jack Michaels look like he's a choir boy in the way he does the games. I mean, that's how bombastic Bowen is and how enthusiastic. But he will be missed. And while everybody says that no one listens on radio anymore, I think the cities that have traffic congestion to get through to get home, and that's not Greenville, South Carolina, or West Hartford, but It is Toronto. Horrible traffic in Toronto. I think you listen to the games on radio. I do. He's
that entertaining to listen to. And why wouldn't you? And just put this on your wish list for next season. We need to get him on as a guest.
We need to do that. That's true.
Okay. And a minor trade was pulled off on Friday with the Boston Bruins acquiring defenseman Victor Soderstrom from Chicago for Ryan Mast, the defenseman in his 7th-round pick. Soderstrom won the Börje Salming Award this past season as the top defenseman in the Swedish Hockey League. He has played 53 NHL games to date. And Mast was the 6th-round pick by the Bees in 2021 and spent last season playing for Providence in the AHL. Speaking of which, the Calder Cup got underway on Friday down in Charlotte. Abbotsford beat the Checkers 4-3 in double overtime. And sometimes, Neil, we come on the show and we say, just when you think you've seen everything, you haven't seen everything.
That's right.
So here's what happened. In the second overtime, the 3:38 mark, goaltender Artur Shilovs, you've heard of him before, played for Vancouver during the playoffs a year ago, is fixing his equipment. His back is to the play. The linesman drops the puck as he's turning around to get set, and his own center, Ty Mueller, draws the puck right into the Abbotsford goal for the apparent game-winning goal. The officials get together, decide that the goal should not count because it is essentially their error for dropping the puck before the goalie is ready. And so play resumes. About 7 minutes later, Abbotsford wins the game on a goal by Danila Klimovich.
And so the Vancouver Canucks affiliate wins over the Florida Panthers affiliate.
Yes. And remember, I did say the Canucks would make the final. I just didn't say which one.
That's right. Well, it's the Abbotsford Canucks. So you're right. Again.
All right. Sir?
This day in Stanley Cup history.
And we take you back to 2006, where Fernando Pisani of the Edmonton Oilers scores the first shorthanded overtime goal in a Stanley Cup final in Game 5 of their series with Carolina. The Oilers would win Game 6 only to fall in the 7th game in Raleigh. During the course of that regular season, Pisani had 18 regular season goals and scored 14 in the postseason. Certainly a career highlight for Pisani in the year 2006.
He turned his game up in the playoffs, that's for sure.
Okay. Anything else on this date?
Well, I think one of the best things that could happen to me, and then one of the worst things that can happen to any of us. I'll leave that one out, but I'll go to the Rangers winning the Stanley Cup in 1994. One of the best days of my life. An incredible 7-game series against the Vancouver Canucks.
You wake up on a day like this. You know it's been 31 years. Do you replay the day over and over because the club had a 3-1 lead? You come back, the curse, all of this is on the franchise, and you're the leader of the franchise. And do you replay this day over again every year on June 14th?
Pretty much, but I don't replay the whole day because I can't remember most of it. I replay the game over in my head, and the part that really matters is a part of winning that face-off back into the corner, and it's over, and we've finally done it. And I think all of our biggest memories is that the relief that it was finally over.
You said to me off camera that you send texts out every year.
Yeah, every player, the people that were on the staff, Matt Loughran, Barry Watkins, the trainers who are still with us. Unfortunately, 2 of them have passed. One of our players from that team has passed, of course, in Karpovtsev. As is typical, I can't find a number for Tikkanen, so I can't send him a text every year. But I pretty much got every player, and Mike Keenan, and Colin Campbell, and I send them happy 31st anniversary. Last year I sent them, I sent them last year?
Yeah.
Happy 30th anniversary.
I thought maybe that you would have sent them a link to 1990 Forever, our 5-part series. That, by the way, is still on our website. So for Ranger fans out there that are having championship withdrawal, go to NHLWraparound.com and you could replay that journey to the Stanley Cup.
And it's a great series orchestrated by none other than my partner here, who it was his brainchild. And he was the host of that series, and it was a cathartic, great, fun series for everybody involved. Everybody said that after they'd done the shows, that they had had a great time, and it was a cathartic feeling. It put you back in the moment.
Our guests were John Davidson, Glenn Healy, Steve Larmer, Kevin Lowe, Mike Richter, Stefan Matteau, and the big 3, Brian Leach, Adam Graves, and Mark Messier.
Yeah, it was really fun. And as I said, really well done. It was your brainchild. So if you haven't seen it, haven't heard it, and you're a Ranger fan, I encourage you to do so. Now, if you're an Islander fan, it'll still entertain you, but you won't be too happy about listening to that again because you didn't want it to ever happen.
Well, and the Islanders have their own show, right?
Yes, they do. 45th anniversary.
Right, which we dropped last month. So, one thing I want to mention before we wrap the show here, because we had just spoken about Joe Bowen retiring after next season as the radio voice of the Toronto Maple Leafs. And if the Leafs don't win the Cup again, I would hope that if the Leafs are in position to win a Cup after Bowen retires, that they would bring him back for a potential clinching game. The same way the Rangers brought Marv Albert back, because remember, Howie Rose was the primary radio play-by-play man, but it was Marv Albert that called the first and the third periods of that 7th game.
As he says in our special, Marv says that he knew exactly what he said that night at the end of the game. The call was, and the Rangers have won the Stanley Cup, something many people thought they would never see in their lifetime. And he explained exactly why he said that. I think the most famous call, though, coming from that night was Sam Rosen with "The waiting is over."
The New York Rangers are the Stanley Cup champions. Pause. And this one will last a lifetime.
Yeah, there you go. And it has. 31 years is some people's lifetime.
Well, congratulations on this anniversary. You'll be getting a text from me at 10:59 this evening.
That's probably when I'll get one from Barry Mizell as well. He hits me with a text every year on June 14th. And, there has been some years where I didn't realize it was that day. And Barry reminded me.
I used to call my dad every year, 10:59, till he got up in years. And then I would call him at 10:59 in the morning just so we would be able to match up the time on the clock. So there you go.
Well,
thanks for listening today. We are going to be back on Sunday with a recap of Game 5 of the Oilers and Panthers. And we will also be back with NHL Wraparound on Monday with our guest, the general manager of the Anaheim Ducks, Pat Verbeek. Enjoy Game 5.